Morning, everybody. Welcome to Outerz0ne 5. All right. Everyone awake yet? Yeah. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Do what? I tell you what. Did you bring mine? Jeez. So, everybody doing all right so far? Yeah. Breathing past the alcohol haze from last night. Going to be kind of impromptu this morning because I can't remember what my cute little speech and everything was going to be, so I'm just going to stand up here for a minute or two and, yeah, ramble. Fill in while he juggles something for a minute. From the website, there isn't really a continental breakfast. That was actually a holdover from last year, and I didn't have time to change that and realize, oh, shit. So I was actually going to stop and get a bunch of Pop-Tarts, but I didn't get a chance to do that. Just throw them in the middle of the room. He's got a spare Pop-Tart. That's a brave man right there. My South Beach Diet breakfast bar is back in the back. I have to go tend to that in a bit. How do you correctly pronounce your name?
Morgellon.
Morgellon. Okay, I was trying to put that French flair on it. Clearly not that classy. So, if you've made it in the door and gotten to your chair without your handy-dandy badge, the beautiful women at the back of the room can help you get your appropriate badge, your schedule, little bits of swag. There is a bucket or water bottle back there that's been strategically designed to keep honest people honest, I guess. That is for donations. Outerz0ne's a donation-only con. Thank Al for that later on. He keeps making me do it every year. I can hear Scott cringing while I'm saying that. So basically,
20 bucks in.
Yeah, throw in 20 or Scott's going to kill you. The way we've set it up is it's donation-based. You pay what you can. The guy sitting next to you may have gotten here on the bus and not have any cash to buy dinner tonight, so I'm not expecting him to cough up a bunch of cash, but hopefully in the end everything balances out and we come out at least breaking even. That's my goal. I do it for the fun. I don't do it for the profit margin because, oh, it's so slim. So we've got T-shirts that we'll be cranking out later. The same rig that I did the Outerz0ne staff shirts with. I'm doing a talk at 11. Oh, I'm doing a talk at 11 o'clock on silkscreen printing primer.
Better hurry up and write it.
I know. There'll be no slides because, never mind. But yeah, I'm doing the primer on silkscreen printing, and we'll be doing the actual con shirts on site, which is kind of a new thing. I don't think anyone's tried that before. You can come up and watch it being done during the lunch break. We will, for lunch, if I understand correctly, have pizza brought in courtesy of the Shmoo group. The guys that put on ShmooCon up in D.C., they're going to hook us up and feed us for lunch. So we can hang out here, eat some free pizza, and make T-shirts and have a good old time. Also, we've got other things as the day goes on. We'll announce them. But one of your swag things for the con is a can of Brondo, which, there you go. We've got the movie we'll be playing snippets from a little bit later on just for fun. Yes, Jim. No, you can't go to the bathroom, Jim. Put your hand down. What? What?
Just as a note, it's 2 servings per can.
It's 2 servings per can. Do I look like I have a caloric intake issue?
Hey, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the crowd, bro.
All the thin guys. Hey, if Scott gets more than halfway through a can, tackle him.
We've dealt with Brondo overdose before.
Yes, it's a very, very sad thing. The green pea, the shakes, it's terrible. So anyway, Morgellon's going to start off the morning a little bit late just because we were juggling stuff. I'm sure he's going to blame me later on for why his talk's only 20 minutes long. He's going to do manifesting open source in physical space. So, gentlemen, if y'all give him a round of applause.
Down. First, before I start, I'd like to give a microphone. All right. Before I start, I'd like to give a nice little shout to Hacker Public Radio. It's a little project that's done by the community. Anybody can record a short little episode of a show. This is a daily show. It comes out Monday through Friday. It's done by a bunch of people who just record a short episode and can upload it to the show. Just check it out. It's all community driven. So Yeah, instead of one person having to do a show, you know, each day every week, one person does. We get 30 people to do one show a month, and we've got daily content. So we always like to pimp that out. Let's see. Hello, Arduino. I'm going to talk about the Arduino. The Arduino is a microcontroller platform. This is a middle ground for hardware and software. This is kind of where the two meet. It's a good playground for people who know a little code or know software or know hardware or vice versa, or even if you don't know anything at all about it. So I'm going to go through, and I had some software issues. I like to give thanks to Patrick and Jeremy. So they let me borrow this wonderful EPC so I could give this presentation. Otherwise, I'd have no slides, and it'd be really, really boring. Okay, I don't know if you, really can't see it. That's the physical schematic for the Arduino. I'm not really going to dwell on that on this talk. The Arduino is a cool platform because it simplifies electronics. You know what? Let me back up before I get into this. Why should you get into Arduinos? Why are Arduinos awesome? Why should you get into hardware hacking? Okay, we live at a point in time where we have access to a level of technology, the level of possibilities that we have in that surrounds us as far as even junk is amazing. You know, this is stuff that wouldn't have been possible 20, 30, 50 years ago. So we really should get in and start doing some of this hardware hacking. In the open source community, as far as Linux, you've got a bunch of people that come together, put little snippets of code together to get projects going. It all kind of comes together and meshes. I'd like to see something like that get together with the hardware as far as, wow, I wish I had a device that did X, and I could get online and find a part lists, a little bit of code, slap it all together, much like I would compile some code or get the different dependencies, put it all together. Now I've got a nice little program. Same thing, now I've got a nice little Wi-Fi scanner or something like that. So that's why. But the Arduino is it's a microcontroller platform. It works on it's digital electronics, which means that it's based on 5-volt logic, which is good. It's low power. It runs off batteries. Can't get yourself hurt. There's lots of parts available. Let's see. Okay, this is 5-volt logic. Basically, 5-volt logic is a way of sending yes or no's. In a digital environment, you have yes or no. There is no middle ground. There is no in between. So the way that the Arduino sends a high or low or a true or false or a 1 or 0 to signal communications is by this voltage range. So if I wanted to send a 0 or a low signal, I would have in the low range those 0 volts to 0.8 of a volt. And if I wanted to send a high, I'd send a signal of 2 volts to 5 volts. All right. Okay. Here's the Arduino down here. Terrible, everybody can't see. I've got a small little program hooked up right here. Not being very clear at all, I apologize. I've really lost everything that I had set up. I'm kind of running by the fly. But this is an example. Can everybody hear okay? This is an example of why I'm attracted to the Arduino. I've got the Rock Band drum kit set up right here, and what I've done is I've interfaced into it with the Arduino. The Rock Band drum kit, it's got knock sensors, which is basically a piezo speaker. The little speaker, it's one of those hooked up backwards. And so if you hook it up backwards and you smack it, it generates a small amount of voltage. And then that's what they're using to read that little bit of voltage to know, hey, you whacked the drum. What I've done, instead of hacking into the USB controller and all that, I left that alone. And what I did is actually, well, if you'd like to see it afterwards, I can pop it open. But I actually just popped open each one of the drums and soldered on to the little knock sensor itself and brought some extra wire out. So I've still got the full functionality of the drum set. It's a PlayStation 3 version, so you can still hook it up and it still works. But I've also got the added functionality of, I don't know if you can see, but when I smack the appropriate colored drum, I get the appropriate color light that comes on. And it's not going to change the world. It's nothing amazing, you know, but it's a fun project that took me, you know, maybe a couple hours as far as trying to figure out how to get the drum apart without destroying it. You know, just hooking up the multimeter to figure out what the polarity of the sensors were, make sure I had the right reading. I'm a hardware guy. Code is my extreme weakness. It's what I'm learning right now how to do. So it takes me more time to write the code than it does to put all this stuff together. So I have the code, and I would love to show you. This right here is the Arduino IDE. It is based off of the processing environment, which I'll bounce back to in a minute. But the language is a pseudo-C language. It's not a real language, but it's very similar to C. So some people get snobby about it. I'm all about it's easy to write with, it's easy to work with. I don't have to be an expert. I can get in, I can make my lights blink, and my life is happy. So what I've done is, this is the code that is running. And basically what I've done is I've declared a couple pins for what my output LEDs are going to be. And then basically what I'm doing is I'm listening for a small amount of voltage on each one. And I'm sure there's probably so much better way to do this in the code. But I'm basically just doing a short loop. Hey, is there anything on coming in on any one of these lines? The delay value is in microseconds. So that's 75, I'm sorry, milliseconds, not microseconds. But it's fast enough to where you can actually, I don't know if y'all see, but you can actually, you know, so it's enough to where even my bad code can get the almost multiple inputs. So no, I can't smack two of them at the same time and get them to light, but within 75 milliseconds, yeah, so good enough. Another part that I like, that I have fun with, is it can output to serial. So the Arduino is communicating over USB. We hook it up through USB or serial port. In my case, it's through USB. But it does all the communication over the serial port, which is really convenient, because that means that all of a sudden I've got a way to interface all this hardware with the computer and software in a very easy manner, because it's all going over serial. So this is very cool. So what I've got going on here is when I hit whatever appropriate one, well, let me get out of the way. But yeah, you see that the value changes. And so if I lightly tap it, I get a low value. And if I smack it, I get a higher value because I'm generating more voltage when I smack it. So you know, this is something that I could interface into with the lights, so I could have it when I smack the drum harder, the lights are brighter, or I could interface it with some software to, you know, pulse more or have a string of LEDs that the harder you hit. So there's a lot more fun you could just keep kind of expanding upon and rolling with. Let's see. If we have internet. This is something I would have liked to have already working, but I didn't have time to get it all going, even though it's really simple. If the video will load, basically it's an example of processing and Arduino communicating. The Arduino IDE and processing are the same thing, so they look very similar. Processing is an artist's language, so it's kind of designed for more of the visual creative process. So the video would load. Basically what you're going to see is I've got the Arduino and a little yellow LED. And on the screen with processing, I've generated a little square. It's like a 200 pixel by 200 pixel square. But when the mouse moves over that square, it lights the LED. And that's all it's really doing. It's nothing fancy, but it's the basic, as far as what's going on, is the Arduino is listening on the serial port, and it's doing something, changing the state of the LED based on what's coming over the serial port. So with processing, when my mouse is not over that square, it's black, and it's sending out the letter L over the serial port. And when I move my mouse over that pixel area, it changes the color to yellow, and it sends out an H over the serial port. And then when the Arduino detects an H on the serial port, it lights up the LED. It's real simple, basic code, but you can interface into a whole lot of languages with this. So we're talking, we can get into C, PHP, Ruby, it goes on and on. Really anything that can talk over serial. I've seen some really cool MIDI stuff that people have done, which I'd really like to get some projects going with that. But yeah, so as you can see, I'm really excited with the idea of interfacing other electronics together and getting something out of them. At first, when I sat down to do the Drum Hero mod, I took apart the controller, and I was going to try to actually interface in with the controller and try to figure out, you know, okay, well, when I hit this one drum, it's got to send whatever the equivalent button press would be over the controller port, and I was way overthinking it. And I had one of my buddies come over that not really into computers, not into electronics, he's just regular guy, you know, and he said, oh, did you have any luck, you know, hooking up to the actual drum, to the sensor? Never thought of that, you know, geez, dude, that's awesome. So, you know, that really helped, and it kind of really opened my mind that, wow, if there's a lot of ways that I can tie into hardware. I don't have to actually get into that abstract level of interfacing with another device's microcode or something like that. For example, Droops did a Wi-Fi detector that interfaced with the Arduino. And so basically what it was one of those cheap little keychain Wi-Fi dealies. It would have 4 LEDs for the signal strength, and then also had, I think, a LED for if it was encrypted or open. And so instead of having to worry about doing all the protocols and sniffing and all that, he took the Arduino and tied it into the LEDs of the Wi-Fi. So basically, he has the Arduino with a little bit of code saying, okay, listen for a high on this port. And so when the LED would come on, it's changing a state from low to high. And so the microcontroller is going to see that change of state. And so we've got, say, 4 pins for the 4 signal strengths. So we can easily send it over to the Arduino and know, hey, the Arduino is within 4 signal strength or 3 signal strength of an encrypted or unencrypted. And we've avoided having to get into the nitty-gritty of what is this hardware doing, how exactly is it working, and just soldered on to the LEDs. So it's not the ideal end solution, but it's nice for the starting point. I can get in, and I don't have to be a master necessarily of technology, but I can still, an interesting product. I can still do stuff that's neat and is more than just a blinky LED. It's a bunch of LEDs, all right? Another thing about the Arduino that I like is it's open source, which means that the schematics, the code, everything to make the Arduino is available online. So you can go to arduino.cc, which is the Arduino homepage, and you can download the schematics, the part list. You can make this self your own. You know, the one I've got I think is around $40 or less, and you know, you could make it yourself, assuming you had all the parts for, you know, maybe 10, 15. You know, there's initial cost of having the bootloader. The microcontroller here, the IC chip right there, that's your brain. That's the Atmel 168 chip. And you could order this from DigiKey, Mauser, any kind of big house, a part supplier. And it's around $4. If you were to order it that way, it comes blank. It's not an Arduino. You have to load the bootloader onto it. So there's some extra pins, like that's the nice thing about this development board, is if I had a bootloader, which is, it's a $40 device that hooks up through USB, and I can interface with the ISP pins, JTAG. I'm sorry. Yeah, very little sleep. Get all my stuff mixed up. But yeah, so I can program over there. So I could pop out that programmed IC, put in a blank one that I got in the mail for $4 from DigiKey, and in the Arduino IDE, we got in the tools, burn bootloader, and there's several different bootloaders listed. So I would hit that, and boom, now my blank $4 chip is now an Arduino compatible, ready to go. So if I wanted to do multiple projects, I wouldn't necessarily need to go out and invest in multiple $40 development boards. You could, but you know, at the same time, if you wanted to get in and get a little solder, and you know, hey, you can do that too, and you can make your own, and it's encouraged. A lot of the, if you were to make your own Arduino, you can't officially call it an Arduino due to licensing. So the term that's arisen is a free Duino or anything else along that. I've seen one that was for controlling robotics and things, but basically you can call it a free Duino if it's not an Arduino, and that's just, it's an unofficial Arduino. But they come in all kinds of different shapes and forms for different tasks. I don't know if you guys have heard of the RepRap project that NYC is doing, but that's done with Sanguino, which is kind of like the big brother of the Arduino chip. Instead of the Atmel 168, it's using the Atmel 6444P, which has like 4 times the memory. It's got double the digital output. I think it's got a couple extra analog inputs. But it's basically got a lot more space to work with, so the RepRap guys are using it. This is another version of the Arduino. If you guys want to pass it around, check it out. It's called the Lily Pad, and what it is as it comes around, you'll notice that it's got a bunch of holes on the outside, and that's because it's designed for being sewn into clothing. It's for kind of like wearable electronics. This is something that really excites me. The idea of having wearable electronics and stuff just really gets me out. Well, here, here's one. This is a conductive thread. It works just like wire, basically, except it's thread. So I could take that, the LilyPad Arduino that's going around, and I could take the thread, sew it to my shirt, and then take like some surface mount LEDs, and what's it? Leah Buckley, I'm terrible with names, but she's the one that has designed that version of the LilyPad there, and what she's done is she's taken surface mount LEDs, they're little square LEDs, and taken like either brass or copper, like little beads, and then taking a little bit of solder and put it on to the end of the surface mount LED, and that way you've got a way to loop your thread through. So she's, you know, you can sew on your different LEDs onto your t-shirt. She's done a whole lot of different projects. One that I thought was really interesting, and it hits that practical side of things, is she had a jacket with on the back. It had LEDs and turn signal, kind of like greater than, less than symbols. And so that way when she was riding her bike, she had turn signals for, she had a little buttons in her sleeve, so she could let people know where she was going. So it's kind of a fun, practical way that, you know, for a couple dollars, a little bit in time, a little bit of conductive thread, you've got something that, you know, you really can't get anywhere else. So I don't know, the idea of kind of the possibility of making your own embedded wearables really excites me, and especially the idea of doing it and not looking like a cyborg or really standing out. That's awesome. One of the projects I'm currently working on, I have no real awesome craft skills as far as the embroidery and the needlework and all that. So I'm currently working on my handwork, the needlework. I've got a sewing machine I'm in the process of learning to use. And I'm doing a talk at Nauticon in April in Cleveland. And the goal is to have a little prototype, a lightweight jacket by then with the lily pad embedded in it. And my goal for the physical computing is to, my kind of test run is going to be to expand the senses that we already have. We're surrounded by all kinds of stuff that our senses can't pick up, whether it's infrared, ultrawave, because our eyes only see so far into the spectrum, whether it's radio waves or, you know, it's interesting how light waves, as they propagate, you know, we pick them up with our eyes or with our ears or maybe with UV burns, you know, our skin. But yeah, I'm interested in how can we pick up all this extra stuff that's floating around and interface it in with our existing senses. So, for example, I'll bounce back to the Wi-Fi sensor that I talked about earlier. So, like the Wi-Fi sensor that Droop's made, let's say we put it in the sleeve of our coat here. And let's put a small vibration motor, like from a cell phone or a pager, something like that. So as we're walking around and we hit a Wi-Fi area, it can give us a little buzz. Let's say buzz, buzz. Well, we got 2 short pulses. That means we're in a range of open Wi-Fi. If we're walking around, buzz, buzz, long. Oh, it's encrypted here. Let's keep walking. But we're just walking down the road. There's no external senses. Nobody but you is aware that, hey, all of a sudden, I know that Wi-Fi is here. You know, if you don't stop, you don't move, you know, you just keep on going. It's an extra sense. It's like walking down the road and picking up on an extra conversation. So it's kind of the idea of taking, we've got a huge organ that covers, you know, our entire body, the skin. So to interface the tactile sense of feeling with, you know, picking up wireless signals, stuff like that. The same idea, wireless cameras is everywhere. We're not as bad as England or some places, but some people may be really worried about the idea of Big Brother. Some people would like to know, hey, is somebody watching me? You know, not because I'm doing something wrong or something horrible. Thank you, bro. But, you know, just for the, you know, the privacy factor. You know, it's kind of nice to know if some creepy dude's watching what you're doing. Maybe I won't pick my butt. So the idea is a lot of these night vision cameras and stuff like that, they're using infrared to enhance the range or their viewing ability. So going along with the idea of the coat, say we put in infrared sensors, say in north, northeast, east, you know, 8 pinpoints all around the jacket. So as we're walking down the road, say we've got our camera up here, as I'm walking by, the infrared light is gonna ping around to those sensors. So I would say we have vibration motors hooked up to each one. So as I walk by, I'm going to get a buzz, 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 buzz. So I could turn around and go, hey, the camera's behind me, the camera's in front of me, just based on the orientation of where the buzzes were coming from. So I'm not standing out, I'm not being a creepy dude, I'm not looking for the cameras. But at the same time, as I walk from my house to the grocery store, or, you know, to get a pack of cigarettes and a soda and walk back to the house, hey, I know that I'm not picking my butt while I walk by that house because they've got a camera. I'm going to wait till I get a little bit down the road, and then I'm going to scratch away. A lot of stuff that we can interface with the Arduino, there's a bunch of companies that are making really cool little interface devices. This is made by Joe Grand, his Grand Studios. This is a little RFID reader, but it's got 4 pins on it. One is voltage, one is ground, one is to enable or turn on the reader, and that's a ground pin as well. And then you've got another one which is signal, which is basically you're going to swipe a tag. You're going to swipe a tag, and it's going to send the information of that tag over the serial to the Arduino. So, you know, there's a lot of ways that you could interface, you know, this into different programs, stuff like that. Like I said, that's the cool thing. It's using digital logic. So it's either on or it's off. If you've got something that is kind of analog, so to speak, that's bouncing around in the range, on the Arduino, there's 6 analog ports. The Atmel 168 has 6 analog to digital converters built in. So we can take advantage of that in our projects when we're working with stuff. Sorry. Which is very handy. So if we're messing with something that's more analog, say like a photovoltaic sensor or something, say maybe I've got a little robot and I'm interested in having my robot when the battery power is below a certain percentage level, you know, I'm losing so many milliamps that, okay, you're going to start looking for where the brightest light spot is, and then you're going to park there until the battery state changes to above this. So when you're looking for that levels of sunlight, that's going to be an analog reading. So you're going to have to take that into the Arduino and then translate that into a digital reading. There's a lot of example code on there. Let's see. I'm really kind of bummed because I don't have I had hardware problems. But does anybody have any questions? Does anybody, I've kind of been sporadic.
You mentioned the analog digital converter. How many bits is that for the digital portion?
Okay, he's asking about the analog to digital converter. It's 1024 is the, yeah. So and then you can convert. When I'm reading for a potentiometer, I'm sorry, this is where I lack on my code part or whatever, but the values come in anywhere from 0 to 1023. And then on the digital side, I convert that from a number between 0 and 255. Is that? I'm an expert. So yeah, I mean, for the bang for the buck, you really, it's kind of hard to beat. There's a great community of stuff out there. A lot of the stuff that I've gotten going and gotten working, I've been able to piece together from a lot of just sample code or stuff that people's already got going on out there. There's an IRC channel, freenode.net, #Arduino. A lot of great guys in there from all around the world. So basically any time of day, there's somebody in there to look around and ask some questions. There's a couple really, really intelligent guys in there. Anybody else curious about anything else?
So you can actually take this all the way and make a drum synthesizer out of it?
That I was being pressed to do was to go ahead and with the Rock Band little drum mod here was to go ahead and have a MIDI out. So with hydrogen, you can what is it? Whatever the serial coming in for hydrogen, you can have a virtual serial adapter that hydrogen can read. Like I said, and then we can send the information from, like say, whatever drum was being hit. So we could have 2 represented as for the snare and 1 for the bass and the hi-hats or whatever that the hydrogen would output. So we could have A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, and 4. So when 1 is hit, it'll send 1 over the serial port. We could do it real simple. And it's, hey, 1. So, and then, like I said, where we had where we've got the sensitivity levels, that would be something that would apply in hydrogen. So if I'm, just barely tapping the drums or really rocking it, we could have those levels show.
So I think the next valuable thing for Rock Band would be to set up a webcam and take the input off the webcam. Whenever it says to hit the red drum, you automatically generate a red drum hit.
Yeah.
So you should call in the game.
There's some guys. There are some guys that've done that.
That's Kerbach's idea, by the way.
No. There's some guys that have done a similar with the guitar. They actually have a little it was driven by PLCs, but they had a camera that would watch, and I think I want to say they were using processing, but I could be totally wrong. But yeah, and basically it was watching for the color changes on the screen and sending out the output. One of the things that we had thought as a different way to achieve the same thing, it'd be a little harder to do as far as you couldn't just sit down and play any song. But say, for example, you went through and you could, quote unquote, map out a song. So say you have to pick a particular song and a starting point, but when I generate something on the drum here, I'm creating a beat and a time. So I could have a starting note to represent a value and then a timer going so that I could have the Arduino kind of act like the middleman to fool the PS3 into thinking that I had smacked the drum when I hadn't smacked the drum. So I could load up kind of whatever code and I could sit with the guitar and then I'd have to hit that first note on the drum to get it going. But after that it would keep with the time cycle and I could still rock out. So that was a different way we had thought about doing it as far as what's the minimal amount of hardware, but you'd have more time because you'd have to encode each song. So kind of the give and take of, well, I don't have a webcam and I don't want to mess with vision software, but I can, figure out some timing and red, yellow, blue, green, and write out some bad code. Let's see, running low on time. Anybody else curious about anything else? Mr. Adrian?
Questions. I know there's various hardware modules you can add on to add new functionality. It's curious if there's an Ethernet one, and you were also telling me that there's a library out there for making the USB interface act like a keyboard if you wanted to, so you can use it as an input device.
I believe, please don't quote me on that. But there is, the cool thing about the Arduino is since it's pseudo C, you can import libraries just like you can in C. So if you need a library to handle servos or something else, I have a buddy of mine, Coder365, he wrote a program for doing Morse code. So basically he wanted to be able to type in a string and then have it generate that in Morse code and be able to set variables as far as the words per minute, the tone lengths and stuff like that, how many times it repeated, basically for a fox hunt. So I don't know if you guys are hams, but basically that was the kind of the idea of what was going on. But he had to write an actual Morse code library for his program to kind of minimize on some of the code there for the Arduino. And the Ethernet. There are a billion different, they call them shields. With the Arduino, in that the way it is there, they call them shields, and basically it's a module with a bunch of different sensors. An example, the Ethernet shield has an Ethernet port, and it has a bunch of pins that line up with those pins, and you basically just seat it down on top of it. And so you could get a big stack of different stuff going on, assuming that you can access through all the pins and have open pins going. But the Ethernet shield is really neat, and I haven't messed with it, but from a couple of my buddies that I have talked to, it's apparently really easy to get some neat stuff going. They've been using PHP and doing stuff like that. I've seen some really interesting stuff. Something that I'm interested in messing with is I kind of got addicted to Twitter. So one thing that I think would be really fun would to be hook Twitter up to the Arduino. Give me just a different visual interface. That's one thing that I'm interested in too. Is there's so much information that's coming in electronic or in different formats, and really it interrupts with the workflow. You're either falling behind because you're not up on this information, or it's popping up, it's interrupting your workflow. As I get older and start getting more serious about projects, you really understand how important time management is and setting critical goals, and it's really important. So to have that workflow interrupted and stuff, that's kind of when I'm working on some of these projects, I think it'd be really cool to have more of a subtle influence that wouldn't interrupt my workflow. So like with Twitter, instead of the message popping up where, oh, I can read it and interrupt my workflow, why not hook it up with the Arduino to have a couple LEDs? So I have 3 different colors, for a regular message, reply or direct message. And I have, a stack of LEDs. So if I have, more than 3 or 4 messages, multiple LEDs start coming on. So kind of over at a glance, I can see I've got tweets awaiting me, and wow, I've got a whole bunch because look at all those LEDs. So more of that kind of glance at a thing. Or I was really intrigued by, it was the orb device. I don't know if you guys had seen it, but basically it was just a frosted piece of glass with a bunch of LEDs on it. And you hooked it up through USB, and it would change different colors based on different notifications. So if you had email or something, it would pulse green, and if you had this or that, and it would pulse back and forth the different colors to give you the different notifications. And I really like that idea. I like the idea of having something that, it's almost kind of applying that Pavlov's dog syndrome to us, so that training that, okay, blue means this and red means this, and, but you kind of train yourself. I like the idea of having, something like an orb or, something like that have a different couple color patterns or something that I can glance at when I get up in the morning or still be half asleep, and based on the color pattern or arrangement of colors, grasp a large amount of information from it, going, it's going to rain today, I've got 5 tweets, and, this and that and this, and I'm going to go pee, and I'm going to go back to bed, because none of that's that important. Or maybe it is, maybe I, should do other stuff. But yeah, I don't know. So the main goal of this talk, other than hopefully not to confuse you, was to really just kind of get you excited and about the Arduino stuff. If you're not already about it, I don't know what it is. It's starting to get a little bit more mainstream. More and more people, when I say the Arduino, go, okay, instead of, that's awesome. And yet it's really not, I can do it. Like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Like, yeah, we can train my dog to do it. It's awesome. He doesn't have thumbs. But yeah, so like I said, that's a lot of people, because like when I was talking about the like the Wi-Fi sensor to somebody else, they start, well, how are you going to do the protocol, and how we just hook up to the LED, so there's different levels of complexity. So you don't have to be Master Ninja. You just kind of have to figure out, okay, where does the device that I want to hack into, where's this output port? So, I mean, anything that has a status light on it, your coffee maker, okay? I could hook up the Arduino with a little wireless serial module for about $5. This wireless serial module. I get a range of around 500 feet in open area, so you got walls and stuff. You're going to decrease that. But say for your house, you have a wireless module hooked up to the coffee maker. So I can, in theory, when I get up in the morning, I can press a button to start my coffee while I'm sitting at my computer reading. When your coffee's done, if you've got a little LED that comes on, the Arduino can be listening for that low to high, that change of state. When that light comes on, it could send a message because that state has changed and light up your LED back in your room where you're sitting in front of the computer and go, ding, coffee's done. Awesome. So that's the kind of thing that I like, is there's all kinds of LED. Everything's got blinky lights now. They're blue, they're red, they're green, they're awesome. And that right there, that's an interface port. You don't have to know assembly. You don't have to be all this abstracted. People get really kind of, oh, I don't know where to start. I don't know how to, so breaking it down to that smaller level of, okay, well, find some LEDs. Start tying into those. Learn about other different small sensors and how they operate. And really, it's a very snowball kind of process. It doesn't matter where you start. Once you start on something, it all just kind of compounds onto something else and something else. And before you know it, you've got a room full of really weird-looking stuff. And, yeah, and it's a good thing to not leave that out when the women folk come over. But yeah, any other questions? I'll wrap it up to save for time. Awesome. Thanks for listening to me ramble.